As you can see in the bulletin today, we are celebrating All Saints Sunday, where we remember the saints of our lives and the saints of the church. We have received names from many of you who we will lift up today and light a candle on their behalf, but I know that there are other names that are in your hearts, not just from this year, but from our lives, and I invite you to lift those up to God as well, and then we'll offer a prayer and a blessing afterwards. We celebrate that they are now standing in the light of God's amazing, everlasting grace. May we remember Annette Borders. We remember Shirley Kane. We remember Betty Carey. We remember Kim Franklin. We remember Kenneth Griffith. We remember Martha Jennings. We remember Rhonda Napier. We remember Russell Neal. We remember Inez Platt. We remember Glenn Stinson. We remember Dorothy King Sutton. We remember Leslie Paul Thompson. Let us go to the God who is always listening and offers comfort to those who mourn. Living God, we thank you for the life eternal, the gift you have given all of us, and for all those who have served you well and now rest eternally from their labors. We thank you for all the saints, remembered and forgotten, for those dear souls that were most precious and dear to us. Today, we specifically give thanks for those who during the last 12 months have died and entered into your glory. We bless you and thank you for their life and love, and rejoice for them that all is well, and all manner of things will be well. God of Jesus and our God, mindful of all those souls who have gone on ahead of us, teach us to continue to follow their example to the best of our abilities, to continue to feed the poor in body or in spirit, to support and comfort those who mourn, to encourage the meek and stand with them, to affirm those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, to cherish and learn from the merciful, to be humbled by and to stand with peacemakers. As we remember and recognize what it means to be called your children, to know that we are to be your saints, not by our own inclination nor our own strength, but simply by the call and the healing holiness of Jesus, our Savior, in whose name we ask all these things. Amen. The scripture this morning comes from the Gospel of Matthew. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. All right, I'm going to get my water. One of those Sundays. So many of you, but not all of you, know that my daughter is named after my best friend from seminary, Brooke Schneidman. Isn't she gorgeous? And I like to remember her on this day. I remember a lot of things. I remember she had the longest eyelashes of any person I had ever seen in my life. And she always had better nails than me. I don't know how that happened. I remember that she loved calling me by my last name, which was Wagner at the time. I could hear it all the way across the quad usually. I remember we waited an embarrassing amount of time at a Chinese buffet for them to bring more crab legs out, because that's the kind of thing you wait for when you want them and you're broke. And she said there was never too long to wait for crab legs. I remember all the times I wasn't a really good friend and how she demanded more of me and for me. Can I get an amen from my mom? Okay. And I remember the day her stepmother gave her this stole, along with a red one and a white one and a green one. I'm not going to be able to look at you at all through this. On her ordination. And I remember when they gave it to me after her funeral, and to 3 other friends, so that we could still wear it and proclaim the gospel, even if it's not the right time of year. That's okay. And sometimes I forget that I get the privilege of saying her name every day when I call my daughter at home. Because taking time to remember is important. That's why we have these rituals, why we light candles, why we pray, why we say people's names out loud. Because those who knew them and loved them knew them individually, but we're remembering collectively, together. Penny didn't even hear my sermon and matched right up with that offering. It's something we do together when we embody and live into these rituals. We remember that by being a part of this community, of this church, we can remember together. We don't have to remember alone. We can share our grief rather than carry it by ourselves. As Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." But I'll have to admit, until Brooke passed away, she was 29 at the time, I had a much more black and white understanding of mourning and grief. Back then, Jesus' line about mourning seemed very easy to understand. Of course, those who mourn would be comforted. I comforted people in my job all the time. That's what I did as a minister. But then I learned that there can be types of mourning where it is very difficult to find comfort. And I realized it took me years to figure this out, but I learned some things that year. I think the main reason I struggled to receive comfort from it was because of some of the ways that as Americans we can often limit our grieving experience. The way we formalize and experience grief is not, it does not match the way that we actually experience grief as human beings. The way we practice it is we sometimes think either the funeral is the end or maybe just a couple of weeks after that. I had somebody say when the last casserole is gone. And that's when, in America, can we stop remembering at this point? Or at least, can you be okay for us? Because we're very uncomfortable with the crying. We're so uncomfortable with it that even when we're crying, we apologize for it. Have you done that before? You're like, I'm so sorry, I'm upset. Yes, of course you're upset. These are the things we get upset about. This is why I bring water up here. Because it's hard, and it's been 14 years. That's how we practice our grief and move through it formally. But as I've said, every person here who has experienced deep grief or tragic grief knows that there's no switching off of that remembering. It doesn't stop. And I learned that when she passed away, like, this pain doesn't go away. And people kept expecting me to just go back to who I was before and just move through the world in the same way and see the world the same way that I saw before. And I couldn't stop remembering her. But God is also faithful. And that same year, this was amazing that this happened the same year, I learned that people in other places in the world had different ways of grieving and remembering. When I got to travel with my pastoral group to southern Mexico, to Chiapas that year, and we specifically went this week. The week we are celebrating right now was when I was down there, the year she passed away, because we wanted to see and experience the celebrations and the rituals around the Day of the Dead. Has anybody ever been down? I'm seeing some nodding to experience some of that. It's unbelievable. For anybody that doesn't know, I pulled some information. The Day of the Dead is one of Mexico's greatest visual spectacles and a celebration. All the while, the fundamental purpose is to remember those who have passed so their souls don't disappear. Photos of the departed loved ones are the most important part of the altar. Colors fill everything. And here's the one that we talked about before. Remembrance is not meant to only be individual, but it is meant to also be collective. So individuals and families grieve, but they also grieve things that they grieve together, a political leader or an event that had happened that year. And when I visited, it was inescapable, all the ways that they were remembering. It was for all of your senses, these incredibly bright marigolds to attract the souls by their color and their scent. You couldn't escape the scent of it. Of all the noise of people talking, cemeteries full of people, there were food stands and vendors. It was smells, it was sounds, it was all around. They came to remember together. Remembering that because people enter into the heavenly realm does not mean that our relationship with them ends. Can I get an amen? I need a little today. What I loved is that these rituals gave them permission to feel it and talk about it and share it. They knew it was coming. It was going to come up every year, that it was designated. They did not see their grieving and their vulnerability as a liability, but as a natural part of their lives and their year. One of my favorite things, I don't know if this is not the one. I love this one. Do you see the Coca-Cola? One of the rituals is you bring their favorite drinks and foods that they would like. And I would love to have told stories about that. Mine would be a Coca-Cola, just like that. Remembering maybe from McDonald's. But this idea that it gave them reasons to talk and tell stories and say names. They taught me I didn't have to stop remembering and that I could build my own rituals and practices around it. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And I can't remember at my church if we did All Saints Day. If we did, I didn't remember it, or it wasn't lifted up, or it wasn't central, and I realized, I have this ritual here, back at home. I can travel to Mexico, but I can do it here, and it transformed it for me. It became deeply comforting and healing. Whether it was the rituals I had seen there or the ones we participated in today, where we made space and we make room to tell the truth. That mourning changes our lives and it doesn't end or stop. That we don't have to stop remembering. In fact, we're encouraged to do it in this place. And that we are meant to create a place that is safe to do that. Not only safe, but encouraged. And as we said, we read a short list of names today, but I know that dozens of names were said silently in your hearts today. Whether those are parents or grandparents or friends or children or family members. What we say on this day is that remembering is a sacred act. It is clearly a spiritual practice. It is one of the many reasons we remember Jesus every single week at the communion table. Do this in remembrance of me. But there are also other things that Jesus wants us to remember, both individually and collectively, in this first part of the Sermon on the Mount, which Matthew's is on a mountain, Luke's is on a plain, but the mount is meant to evoke Moses. It's meant to evoke Mount Sinai. It's meant to think this is a word coming from on high, coming from above, coming from God. And I had one commentator point out that Jesus isn't really asking us to do anything in these phrasings, but he's trying to show us how these parts that we often hide or ignore or shove down are seen differently in God's realm, in God's kingdom. What he wants to do is he wants to bless us. Not when we're at our best, not when everything's perfect, not when we've got it all sorted together, but in these moments. Because so often these are not the things we name as blessings. He wants to bless us in ways that the world does not traditionally bless us. They're not seen as advantages. If you show too much mercy, you might get taken advantage of. If we don't do something that's fair, then maybe it's not going to be equal, or someone's going to get away with something. They're going to get more than what they deserve. But in God's kingdom, that is considered a blessing and to receive the gift of mercy. For those who are hungering and thirsting for righteousness, either in Jesus' time or in 2023, it feels like it can leave you hungry and thirsty, brokenhearted at injustice and equality that seems to be all around us. But he says in God's kingdom, you will be filled. It will be different. Jesus speaks to the reality of his world, and we read these words because it is still true of the human experience now. We still find ourselves on some Sundays, including today, poor in spirit and mourning. And I think one of the things Jesus is trying to tell us is we don't have to fear it or ignore it or treat these experiences as any less valuable. Blessed are you who mourn, for you will be comforted. So I think something that happens when we're in the real midst of the mourning, though, again, I've seen it happen different years. So we forget that grief is one of the universal experiences of our lives. No one gets out of here without experiencing it. Yeah. It can feel so isolating, like no one's gone through this, and there are lots of different experiences of it. It can happen in dramatically different ways, but it is a vulnerability that touches each and every one of us. This doesn't mean I think Jesus wants our pain or needs us to hurt, but acknowledges it is a sign of having loved and been loved. And it is an opportunity to care and be cared for in the midst of it. There's this other thing that I learned about mourning and grief. Is sometimes it comes out, the choked up and the tears, and that's how it can look sometimes. But I've also learned when we are more open about this vulnerability, about this pain, when we share it, it can do this interesting thing when it's someone we maybe traditionally are in conflict with or butt heads or whatever the term is, that it can turn a conflict into a conversation we might never have had. It can transform things. And one of the ways I know this is from an experience, because like we said, it doesn't always come out as sad. Sometimes it comes out as angry, or it comes out as frustration, or it comes out as blame. It can come out sideways when we don't deal with it. And that's everybody. That can happen to everybody. And I had this story of a church member that didn't get along as well with somebody on staff, and they were kind of butting heads. But anyways, so first off, we had candlesticks on our table, very similar to these, but they weren't working very well. We had had them for 40 years. we couldn't get them unscrewed. We were having trouble getting the candles in, and we were like, well, we really gotta, we really should replace these. This is what this should be about. And so we brought the idea to the worship team, and we just got a flat out no. And a real so, maybe not my most pastoral words came out at that time. I had other encounters with a couple of the people on that, and I was like, why is this such a big deal? Why are your candles? Why is this such a, And I'm ready. I'm ready to, okay, this is the thing we need to do. We're going to do this. This is a thing. And then one of the other pastors on staff was like, well, let me have a conversation. Let me go ask this. Let me see if I can come at this from a different way. So it had been one of those weeks. So we did. He went and talked to the person. What we found out was those candlesticks had been donated when those two women's mom passed away 40 years ago. This was not about the candlesticks. And it was important to know that. When we had the conversation about why they were there and who they represented and what they remembered, and I got to hear stories about their mom, suddenly it became a whole different conversation. And we were different in that conversation. And we got new candlesticks. And they were lovely. And we saved the other ones and put them with our previous communion table so they could still remember. And I learned to ask about their mom more often. Remembering is a sacred, spiritual act. It's a lot harder to be mad at people when we know each other's vulnerabilities. It also can create connections between people who believe that they are strangers, that we cannot possibly have anything in common. One of the things I think about is I've heard people talk about other members of churches and be like, oh, they're so faithful. They've just got it all together. You look at an elder, or you look at somebody you've known them forever, and you're like, well, I'm sure this faith thing is just no problem for them. They pray without ceasing, they do the thing. But what I really realized is the people who we often look to when we talk about saints or people we look to is they have probably had their faith tested over and over and over again. They are there because of their vulnerabilities, not because they were always strong. We're all here on some level because we have a common purpose. We have a common goal that we believe that we can bring more wholeness into a world that is deeply fragmented through the life and the teachings and the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I think we're also here because we are also connected, because we are also fragmented ourselves. And we want to come to a place where we don't have to deny that, even though we have to in so many other parts of our lives, whether at work or at school or at the grocery store, or even in our own homes. We need a place to come where we can remember together the way that we are. We are people who mourn. We are people who want to try to be peacemakers, to offer mercy, to come to this community even when we are poor in spirit, trusting that we will not be alone. But we also come to remember these powerful words of Jesus, who says that if we keep hungering and thirsting for righteousness, it means we are still people of hope. It means we believe that righteousness and justice and equity are possible and available to humanity. That we are capable of being people of mercy, even when it doesn't seem to reward us in the ways that the world rewards. It is a reminder every day we can choose to make peace in our own families, in our own lives, in our own communities, in our world. In a world full of violence and disagreements, we can bring peace. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. But we didn't know all of this by magic, though I keep asking for a magic wand to fix a lot of things. For most of us, we were taught by a faith community. It might be this one, it might have been a different one, it might have been several. And some of us have been taught and shaped by this for our whole lives. Others of us here maybe are just starting on that journey, and that's exciting. They don't exactly know how they're going to follow it, what this is going to look like. But we're lucky we get to learn individually from all of our experiences, but we also get to do it together. We get to do faith together. And we start off by today being willing to simply accept and receive that blessing that Jesus wants to give you, that wants to pour over all of us, letting God's Spirit pour into the grieving parts of our hearts and offer us comfort. But we remember because we have been formed by those who came before us, who some of us call saints, who showed us how to live this way, the value of being part of this kind of community, that we should make meals and keep them in the freezers for people, that we should write cards or make phone calls, that we should visit people in the hospital or when they are grieving, that we should show up for the formal rituals and the informal ones, that we say, you are not alone in this. We have to teach people it comes from practice. We don't do it once. We do it again and again and again because someone showed us how to do it. Y'all, there are people who are hungry and thirsty for that kind of community, who desperately need that kind of community, who need to be told they are not alone, that their pain is not a liability, but a blessing and a gift, and that we want to walk alongside them. And we know this because someone has done it, or many someones have done it for us, and they showed us how. They weren't saints because they were perfect. In fact, a lot of them were probably not that much different than us. But they were willing to show us how, because someone showed them. Because someone shared their gift, their story of mourning, of mercy, of peacemaking, or they just were willing to share the vulnerable parts of themselves with us or others. So we will also take a moment and remember. I invite you, and I'll keep track of the time. Think of who it was that taught you this. They may still be with you. They may not. But who is the saint or saints? And tell them thank you. Now, here's the other thing I want you to remember. You also have the power to be that person for someone else. You probably already have been. But if you don't think you have, you still have the power to be that for someone else who needs it. So now I want you to take a minute. Think about somebody in your life. You could be related to them. They could be a friend of yours. They could be somebody you keep kind of bumping into, coming around to. Could be somebody here in church who you could be that person for. And if you don't have a name or nobody comes up, this is the moment where you ask God very explicitly to show that person to you. And it may not appear today. Here's my deal. Sometimes God's timing does not always work on my sermon schedule. But I invite you for this whole week to be thinking, who is that person who needs me to show them the value of this kind of remembering, the value of this kind of blessings. Take a moment to do that. I don't even think Brooke would want me to put her name in the same sentence as a saint. She'd think that was ridiculous. But she was one who formed me. And so I say her name. Her mom told me once, she said, the hardest part is that nobody ever says her name. They're afraid it will hurt me, when it's all I want to do is talk about her. So before I offer you a final blessing in this, say the names. Say them again and again and again to whoever will listen. There is power in remembering. And remember, she did believe deeply, this I know about her, in the words of Jesus, and she loved him very much. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are you who mourn. But hear above all Jesus' word for you. Blessed are you.